Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is DJ Stutz. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, why don't you start off just telling me a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I am an early childhood specialist. So my education and my career opportunities were basically from birth to age 8. I taught kindergarten for many, many years. And then I'm the mother of 5 kiddos. My 13th grandchild is on the way.
Wow.
Between my husband and I, we have 70 nieces and nephews.
Whoa.
Um, he's the youngest of 9. I'm the oldest of 7. So, it adds up quickly.
Right.
um, I've had the opportunity to work with special ed kids. Gosh, for most of my life, I was certified when I was teaching in Las Vegas. That was one of my certifications with special needs. And I taught for most of my teaching career in inner city, lowest income schools. So my students were the children of gang members. And so we had a lot of behavioral issues there. We've also dealt with, as any school does, with the issues of autism and ADHD and ODD and all of the alphabets that are there. But my first concept of children is that they're simply that, children, because we all have special needs, different ways that we process. And so it's just working with that.
For sure. So what is your definition of inclusion?
Well, I think that it's making sure that everybody is able to contribute, that everybody has I believe that every child, every adult, every person has a zone of genius where they are absolutely amazing at something, and each of us is different in that. So I really feel like as part of inclusion is finding the zone of genius in each one of our kids and then incorporating that into being an important and valued part of our classroom, our society, our family, our neighborhood, whatever that is.
Sure. I love that. So how did you, I guess, get started with the special education piece? What got you into that part of it?
Well, I'll tell you, I actually, so my fourth child, my youngest son, um, is severely ADHD. And in fact, when we did finally, I resisted, as a lot of parents do. And so I understand that resistance of getting that label on your kiddo.
Right.
But when we finally went to a pediatric neurologist, I was looking for the best one. This was when we were in Vegas. And he told me that he'd treated over 3,000 kids with ADHD. He said, your son's probably in the top 5 of involvement. So we were having this adventure
Mhm.
going on.
Right.
And so that, I think, is really what opened the door to my investigating and wanting to learn more. And then later we adopted our 5th child. She was 12 years old when we uh, had her join our family. She'd had 7 years in foster care with 11 different placements, 2 failed adoptions. So she was dealing with a lot of neurodiversities from trauma,
Right.
um, along with some in vitro alcohol use and stuff when she was incubating. And so that furthered my desire to know more and to figure out more. So it was always extended classes, taking more college classes,
Right.
figuring those things out and getting certifications. Yeah.
That's Yeah, that makes sense when you're going through some stuff personally. That makes sense that you
Yeah.
would be drawn to that and want to learn more and go down
Yeah.
that path. So, how about growing up? Do you ever remember, being around people with disabilities or any of that stuff?
Yeah.
For me, I don't remember that. So I'm
Really.
always curious about like
Ah.
other people's experiences.
Well, I have a brother with Tourette's.
Okay.
And so we had that experience. And so out of the 7 kids, I'm the oldest. I have 5 brothers, 1 sister. But my brother with Tourette's is just the one just younger than me. And so with the tics and the, all of that going on, we dealt with that. I had a friend in high school, guy, he had a severe stutter that was affecting him emotionally and socially. It was really hard for him. And then I had a little friend growing up that was blind. And so she would come over, and I remember my mom was always so nervous that, she was going to fall or get hurt or whatever. And she actually had a glass eye, and we'd be outside playing and running around. Like, I didn't care that she was blind. She didn't seem to care. And so we'd be running around like maniacs and having fun. And my mom would I remember her always being close and worrying that,
Right.
she was going to get hurt. But so that's pretty much my experience.
Okay. Gotcha. How do we teach our children to be independent?
Oh, well, uh, as much as we don't let their diversity, I hate to call it much of a disability, because some of these diversities offer great opportunities that they would not have otherwise.
Right.
So if we allow, but we don't want to let them use that as an excuse. Like my friend, and her mom was like, my mom's name was D, and she'd be, D, she's gonna fall. She's gonna be fine. But
Yeah.
unless she learns how to play and to orient herself, and she's gonna struggle as an adult. I don't want you treating her differently. And I really believed in that. I remember when my son Christian came to me, it was his senior year of high school, and he said he didn't want to take his medications anymore because he didn't like the way they made him feel. Okay. And you're close to being an adult. You're basically there. I said, so the decision's going to be up to you. But the bottom line is, buddy, medicated, not medicated, you are still responsible for your actions
Right.
and your decisions. Either way. So if this helps you, fine. If it's not helping you, fine. But either way, you are responsible for your, reactions. So we don't want to overprotect them. We don't want to make excuses for them. But we want to support them and help them. And so if they need a little extra help in learning how to do some things that will make them self-sufficient, maybe it's going to take them longer to learn how to dress themselves,
Yeah.
or, to get that math, or, to learn how to play baseball or whatever. Aren't we all just so in awe when we see stories of, a guy, I can't remember his name now, but he only had one arm, but he was a pitcher, in baseball, and remarkably good. And he overcame, no, he was allowed, by whomever, a coach that gave him a chance, parents that didn't give up, that went out and spent that time out with them and encouraged them. But, let's just make that part of it. So right now I am just working 2 days a week. I'm officially retired, but I go back 2 days a week and help with these 2 little boys in an elementary that have neurodiversities and can be actually quite violent when, they're triggered. What I'm amazed at, and I was amazed with this, the same thing when I was teaching kindergarten, is the generosity of young children in those times. So when my little guy will fly off, they seem to just inherently know what to do, when to back off and when to help. And when, he doesn't want to cooperate and go get his book, nobody has to ask. Another child will come and say, here's your book. I got it for you. And not saying anything like you're stupid or you're whatever. When we go out to PE or to recess, he loves being out there and playing soccer and chasing and running, and the kids welcome him and being part of that. So I feel like it's the adults that tend to kind of put those attitudes on them,
Yeah.
or he's a bad boy, don't hang out with him. Let's not do that, but let's help our friend make good decisions. And
Right.
if we can approach and teach our children to accept them in that manner, let's help our friend.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because, yeah, I think even with the inclusion piece, it seems like, younger kids, they, Johnny looks different or he's in a wheelchair, but they still,
Yeah.
include him if there's a game he can play and all that kind of stuff. And then at some
Yeah.
point, it just, as we get older, I'm not sure exactly what happens, but it just make it more complicated than it needs to be. And just like, hey, they're here, just include them. Like, why is it so hard? But definitely it
Right.
seems as the younger age is easier to do some of that kind of stuff for sure.
Yeah. But I see elements of it even as they get older. So like the high school my youngest daughter went to, Columbine High School, Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah.
You might have heard of it. But
Yeah.
but they kind of had this tradition where, and I don't know if they're still doing it. It's been a while since my daughter's gone there, but when she was there, the tradition was homecoming king and queen were special needs.
Hmm.
Prom was gen ed. But and they would do such a big thing, and they'd have people come and help with hair and shopping, and
Mhm.
and just make it such a big deal for the king and queen at homecoming. That is just a generosity of heart that you don't expect to see, and yet it's there if we look for it. And
Right.
then if we
That's true.
encourage it and talk about it and validate it, we can keep that going as they are
Right.
getting older.
That's a great point. Because yeah, we can focus on the negative parts or the positive parts, and you're right. We should focus more on if we do see like those things where they're being more inclusive or acts of inclusion. Focus on
Yeah.
those, bring them up, and talk about those more. That's a
Yeah.
great point.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I keep telling, sometimes you'll see neighbors, sometimes even other teachers or whatever, they're adults, and they'll get frustrated with these kids that are, let's be honest, they can be difficult and it can be hard to have to manage them. But what I keep reminding them is that imagine being 10 years old, 12 years old, whatever, and living in that brain. That brain is on alert all the time, or that brain is feeling down and frustrated because they're dyslexic and they can't understand. So they feel stupid. When you're the adult around, let's stop and think about what this child is thinking and going through, even when they're, and I've seen it happen, ripping the drywall off the wall in, a nurse's office or whatever, because they're just so overly agitated and stressed out and anxiety so high. What must it be like to be in that state of mind? And you're only 10 years old. You don't have any of the world really figured out much there.
Right.
And then let's find our compassion and then help them and not make excuses for them, but then help them understand, did this help you or did it not? And we're going to do that when they're calm, not when they're in the middle of it all. But help them say, understand, I am here to help you. Excuse me. And that can be hard for them to come to terms with. Sometimes
Yeah,
it takes patience and time.
for sure. What is the most important aspect of raising confident children?
Wow. That's quite the question. And I don't know if there's any one thing, but there are several things.
Sure.
And so it is things like giving them the opportunity to do things for themselves,
Yeah.
giving them the confidence. If your child is constantly coming to you and asking for help, okay, so what's the first thing we need to do? So you're not telling them what to do, but you're starting. A kid comes to me, how do I spell whatever? Well, let's see. What's the first letter, do you think? And they'll get that first letter. Oh, okay. So what's the next letter? We can do that with pretty much any task and
Right.
help them learn to be independent in their own way.
Yeah.
I think making sure that they feel accepted for who they are, that they feel heard, they can talk and you will listen and not tell them why they're wrong, why their feelings. Oh, they don't really think that. Well, they feel they do, And so let's get through that. they're given those opportunities to grow and do things and to learn things. Don't jump in to fix the situation right away or very quickly. Oh, they're arguing. Let's sit and see where that goes. You don't need
Yeah.
to jump in on it real fast.
Yeah.
Watch and see. Practice. Give them practice opportunities to role play. And I think that, if you do those things and then reassure them that they are loved, even when they're in trouble, and it's okay. Sometimes they really need to be in trouble.
Yeah.
But even when they're troubled, I still love you. We're going to figure this out together. I trust you. That's going to help them.
Yeah, it's all great stuff. I mean, yeah, I remember growing up. I mean, we went outside, and you tried stuff. You'd fall down, scrape yourself up. That's how you learn. Like, well, I shouldn't do that, or maybe it's okay to do that. So you definitely have to, let them be independent. I guess as a parent, I have a son that's 15 months older than my daughter, so for him, I'm not as worried about like stuff happening. But for some reason, my daughter, I'm more like cautious, so I have to internally fight that myself. Like, I mean,
Yep.
she needs to still take do those things that could have potentially not a positive outcome. I mean, not like let her do stuff that could seriously injure her, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Just something where she
But
needs
let
to
her
take
climb the tree.
yeah, she needs to take chances too.
Yeah.
Like I did or he did. So trying to if you recognize in myself, like, why do I let my son do that, but not her? I mean, why is that? Is it valid? Is there a reason why I'm doing that? Or if not, then, go ahead and let her try as well. So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of
I mean,
fun.
you talked about a little bit ago about that everybody has a zone of genius in them.
Yes.
Do you have any tips on as parents, like how we can try to find what those are for our children, or how that
Sure.
looks?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and be aware that their zone might morph and develop as they get older.
Okay.
And so maybe their zone of genius is just they have an easy laugh when they're younger. They laugh so quickly and fast. Some kids are naturally more compassionate. Some kids are naturally very, very logical and are very rule based and oriented. Others are that wonderful free spirit. Some are musically inclined, some are athletically inclined.
Yep.
So it's really just sitting back and watching, not doing things for them, and find the things that they are doing by themselves. Find the things that they will, when they're bored, when they're, on their own, what are the things that they navigate to do naturally? And that's going to give you a place to at least start, right? So when I was teaching, I made sure every child, we figured out what was great about each, and the whole class knew so and so is a really good reader, so and so is really good at math, so and so is a super helper, so and so
Mm.
makes baskets really great, and we could talk about that as a classroom. I had one little boy. This is years ago, and he had just a hard life. I'll just say that, and something would set him off, and he would just calmly and quietly go and just knock things off of all of the counters and the shelves and desks, and not screaming and yelling. It was amazing. He would just be very calm about it, but there was no stopping him. He's just doing that. So one time I called, my principal came in, smart guy. He came in and sat with the class while I could go out with my friend and we could talk. And one of the things I said to him was, honey, I know you're a good boy. I know you have a good heart. He lost it. I am not a good boy. I am a bad boy. That's what he had defined
Yep.
himself, and others had put that on him. And he was frustrated that I would challenge his own self identification. Let's look at us rather than us identifying who they are. Let them show us. In the end, he was the most honest kid in the room. Did you do this? Yes, I did.
Right.
you know, and he would always tell you exactly the truth. And so that was his zone of genius. Was he tells the truth. And everyone in the class could tell you, what do we like about Joey? He tells the truth, right? And so
Yep.
really watching and looking and picking up on those things. But you're not going to do it without taking the time to sit back, not be, I mean, we're going to be involved with them a lot,
Yep.
but giving them that alone time too, and watching them, not jumping in to fix their problems right away.
Right.
Asking the question, well, what should we do first? They will show you their zone of genius.
Yeah, that's great. That is yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up where you were, telling him he was a good kid and that wasn't his
Oh,
image he had of himself. So, that's how he reacted. It's interesting. I mean, it's a good
yeah,
reminder that you were trying to be, say something nice and good to him,
yeah,
but he wasn't in a spot where he could receive that. So, I mean, that's a good reminder too that sometimes things like that don't go like you think they're going to, for sure, depending on
right,
the past, their history, their trauma, how they, stuff that's happened. So,
right, right. And two, recognize that, their trauma, it may not be mom and dad's fault. I mean, if you've adopted a child in,
yeah,
you're dealing with all that, but your DNA kiddos are going to have traumatic incidences. When my grandfather died, it was very traumatic for me. Pets die,
yeah,
friends, whatever. So be aware that they could have trauma-based behaviors,
yeah,
and it's not that you did anything wrong. It's
right,
life.
yeah. How do I best support my child in school?
Ah, the number one thing that you can do is clean out their backpack every night. Clean it out every night with them. You're going to look at their work that's being sent home that they did in class. So you're going to see what are they getting wrong? What are they getting right? You're going to be up on when it's pajama day or cowboy day or whatever. And so your child doesn't miss out on, those times. You're going to see what their homework is. And so you're going to know what they are studying all the time. And so it's not a big surprise when you go in to, parent teacher conferences and they say, well, Joey's failing reading. What? You know, well, you would know that if you just empty their backpack every night. So that's probably the easiest thing that you can do and go through it with them. And then, two, I would just say have a good line of communication with the teacher. And not if teachers say Joey's in trouble, no, well, whatever, just say, wow, talk to me about what happened.
Yeah,
Be open to the idea that maybe it is your child's fault,
yeah,
or, maybe your child was the bully with all the bullying that's going on, but it's not anybody's kid that's doing it. Who's doing this bullying then if it's so rampant, but it's not anybody's kid, right?
yeah,
So be open to kids have a hard time. And gosh, we as adults, people, we're bullies sometimes, honestly, at work or whatever, when we get mad or angry or frustrated. And so understand that, yeah, kids have a rough time. Sometimes they don't make the best choice. So I would say empty their backpack, have a good open line of communication with their teacher.
those are great tips. So yeah, my daughter, how I got on the inclusion piece is because of her level of need. She was sent to a um, segregated classroom across town, just
Oh, wow.
because of her, level of needs. And
Yeah.
like I said, I had no exposure to disability special education prior to my daughter being born, so I just, went along with what the school said, that kind of thing. Found out about inclusion, so after that, brought up inclusion at the IEP meetings, wanting to get her
Yeah.
in the gen ed classes as much as possible. And
Yeah.
um, we talked, I think, probably off cam. I'm from it's not a super small town, but there's not a lot of other schools nearby. So we always had to, how much do you want to push this? We're not going to like move to, get her more included. So how do you work? We need to work with, the staff in the school here. Do you have any other tips besides like trying to keep, the communication open with the teacher or the team? What kind of tips do you
Right.
have for parents maybe in like my situation where we don't see like specifically inclusion the same way and we're trying to navigate that? How do you
Right.
work with the team to work through that stuff?
Right. And so, some of the things then that I would make sure that I am doing is really know your IEP. So, for anyone that's listening, that's an individualized education plan,
Thank you.
and really know that plan well. Know what accommodations that your child has a right to, and you have a voice in how that plan is developed. So when you go to a meeting, you can say, I've noticed that Johnny is really distracted by other students during test taking, or over gets too much anxiety. And so maybe you can have a plan to, well, they can go and take their test elsewhere in another classroom or whatever, what is right for your child. But you have as much knowledge, I would say, if not more, about the person of your who your child is, their personality, what sets them off, what doesn't, than the specialists that are there. You are equally qualified. I see so many parents go in and it's like, well, these are the, specialists. They know
Yep.
what they're doing. You know what you're doing too.
Yep.
If you're paying attention, you're watching what's going on. And so really educate yourself on that. Another thing that you can do is that every state, they're similar, but they're not the same. Every state has its own um, expectations for, or standards for grade knowledge by first grade, reading, writing. I know in Colorado, I mean, we even had expectations for dance and music and, art and all these things.
Sure.
You can go, if you just Google Minnesota state standards for first grade, second grade, and then understand that the standards that they're giving you are for the end of the year. So that if you're in December and your child isn't quite to that standard yet, well, they've got till, May or June to get there. So we want to make sure that we're on that path. So if you know what the expectations are, where they want your child to be, but then really work to identify where they are, and then what's the next step. It doesn't matter what the other class is doing, or they're 2 grades behind. Well, isn't that lovely? All right, but let's see where they are, and then what's the next step.
Yeah, that's great. What is one tip you can share with the listeners today to be more inclusive? Just something simple that you don't have to pay for, put a lot of investment into it. Just something simple they can do to be inclusive.
Are you talking about a parent with a child with a disability, or a parent who has children and there are kids with disabilities around them?
Let's go with the latter part.
Okay. So we can talk about, and I'm a big fan of the weekly family meeting, where we are able to not only just talk about the schedule and what's coming on, but to even role play and play fun games with events or situations that may be coming up or have come up. So if you know that your child has another kid in the class that is reactive attachment disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, all of those things, and they've come home and told stories about that, you can actually practice with them at home. So tell me about some of the things that Sammy does. Well, she's da 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 da. I'm like, okay. So what's a way that we can help then with that? And make sure that they know, well, maybe Sammy just needs to be left alone. Maybe Sammy wants to make sure that no one's looking at them. That's why they're going under the table. That's why they're doing that, is they're embarrassed about their behavior. How can we help them? And so if we talk about it in terms of how can we help, then that's great. If you go to the park and there's a kid playing that's got a disability, a lot of kids, they automatically know what to do and join in and play. But you'll see a kid they'll get triggered and they'll go off, right? And so we can explain even ahead of time that when kids do that, that's because something isn't firing off. They're scared, they're nervous, and they don't have the skills. Their body, their brain isn't telling them what to do exactly right. And so we can just back off, but we're not going to call that child a bad kid. We're not going to say that child is mean. We're not going to say that child is stupid. We're just saying that child really needs our help. And maybe the best thing I can do to help them is to talk calmly to them. Maybe it's to walk away and let them deal with it alone so that they're not embarrassed. But have these conversations with your kids as they get older. And I'll tell you, a 4 and 5-year-old is plenty old to start having these conversations.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great tip. Why don't you talk or let everybody know where's the best place to connect with you is, and a little bit about your resources or coaching that you have.
You bet. You bet. So I have a podcast that's called Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting. And you can get that on any of the platforms that are out there. And then we also have its own website, which is www.imperfectheroespodcast.com. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching, my workshops, I do a free workshop on the fourth Thursday of every month. So if you even want to come in and be a part of that, you're welcome to. You can get all of that information at www.imperfectheroes.net. And there we are. I also have a children's book out about emotions. Roman is bigger, and he has bigger emotions and trying to work through that. And I've got 2 more books coming out in the spring.
When do you sleep?
I know. I'm always busy. My friends will say, "Are you open for this?" And I'm like, "Oh, let me check my calendar."
Yeah.
But I love what I do.
Yeah. You ready for the last question?
I am.
Do you like Spam? Yes or no?
I haven't had it in years, but we ate it growing up. So my mom did amazing things with Spam.
So that's a yes?
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I asked that question. I live in Austin, Minnesota, where they make Spam and where the Spam Museum is. So if you want to visit the Spam Museum, you have to come to where I live.
I'll have to come there someday.
Yeah, I've been asking everybody and keeping track. It's funny because they're usually laughing or quick no or quick yes. It's kind of funny to see the reactions on people when I ask it.
Yep. Well, it's there, and when you've got 7 kids, it's
Yep, for sure.
Affordable.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't discussed?
Just I think one of my key things, as I say, meltdowns are my favorite, and so just really calm down and realize that kids are just growing up, and that boundaries are important, but they are very important. But we don't have to be a tyrant as we're enforcing those. And that meltdowns are an opportunity for us to grow and to learn more about our own child's zone of genius.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.